Why does the Cuban government say that internet is a subversive media? Why do you think that's going on there?
Well, they're wrong. Es no correcto.
No correcto.
Because 3 billion people, 3.000.000
Millón.
personas use the internet todo día en oficina, en la casa, en Starbucks, hotels, Wi-Fi hotspots every day. It's impossible that 3 mil millón personas en el mundo want to subvert the government of Cuba. The government of Cuba simply is not that important to 3 billion people around the world. Estoy en talla.
Why? Why?
I'll tell you why. I made a very significant investment
I know.
in Cuba. I gave 5 years of my life because I tried to bring, and I did for a short time, bring internet to a few communities around the island. And to come home now and see people gathering to discuss Cuba internet freedom is heartwarming, and to see the courage, particularly from those who came to this conference from Cuba, that it's an issue, it's important to them as it was important to me. I see this as a return on my investment. I don't know how else to put it. Certainly the future of Cuba, the Castro brothers are not relevant to the future of Cuba. And I don't mean that as a criticism of them. If we have a different show, I can talk about that. But Fidel suffers from dementia, and he's not making any kind of sense these days. He's still belligerent towards the United States, totally unnecessary. And Raul is going to retire in 2018. And so...
Are you sure about that?
I'm reasonably sure. He said he's going to retire. I think he's going to retire. I think he's tired. And I think all of the people of his generation are coming to a realization that their system needs to be adjusted a bit in order to deal with the realities of today's markets and today's economies. And they also have to realize that when a nation embraces the internet, their economic performance, their GDPs increase. They increase. And if any country needs to have an increased GDP, it's Cuba. Venezuela represents Cuba's last angel. There are no longer angels for Cuba. Cuba has to be its own angel. Cuba has to stand on its own 2 feet. Cuba cannot have its hand out for a handout. There are no handouts anymore. Venezuela, the $6 billion that used to go to Cuba from Venezuela doesn't exist anymore. They have to stand on their own 2 feet. And they can't do it. The government of Cuba cannot do it without the people of Cuba. They have to give the people of Cuba the tools that will enable them to build an economy so that they can stand on their own 2 feet.
Almost 60 years of economic embargo. What are your thoughts on that? Did it work? Did it not work?
No work.
What happened there?
It's a total failure. Total failure. It didn't do anything to pressure the government of Cuba to change. Nothing can pressure the government of Cuba to change. You know, I'm a social worker by training.
Yeah.
And we have a joke. How many social workers does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is none. The light bulb has to want to change itself. Such is the case with the Cuban government. Today, and probably for the last 20, 30 years, the embargo has been a total nothing. Cuba trades, Cuba calls it el bloqueo. There's no bloqueo. There's not even much of an embargo. Cuba trades with 80 countries around the world, and the United States is among the top 5 trading partners of Cuba. Que bloqueo.
Yeah.
Es nada. No blockade. However, the United States government, for almost 60 years, has wanted the government of Cuba to get out of the way of the private sector, to get out of the way of private citizens in Cuba. Okay, get out of the way, government of Cuba, but the United States government also needs to get out of the way. we can't import products from Cuba because of the embargo. And if we have any hope for Cubanos to produce export quality products and not have a market for them, then it's a game in futility, an exercise in futility. We need to get rid of the embargo so that we're not hypocrites. If we want the government of Cuba to get out of the way, we need to get out of the way too.